You might think you're lazy, that you lack motivation, or maybe even discipline. But psychology suggests something else entirely. What you call laziness is often just unprocessed fear, specifically the fear of failure, judgment, or not being good enough. We like to imagine procrastination as a time management issue, but Dr. Tim Feichel, a researcher from Carleton University who specializes in this field, disagrees. He's clear. Procrastination is an emotion regulation problem, not a time management problem. That means you're not putting things off because you're unmotivated. You're putting them off because the task is emotionally uncomfortable. It threatens your identity, your competence, or your confidence. Your brain isn't being lazy. It's trying to protect your sense of self. This is deeply rooted in how we're wired. When something feels like a threat to our ego, something that could expose our limits or invite judgment, the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system, lights up. So we avoid. Not because we don't care, but because deep down, we care too much. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what happens when we accept the label lazy. We mistake emotional avoidance for apathy. But what looks like doing nothing is often a quiet war happening internally. The fear of trying and failing versus the guilt of not trying at all. If you're still watching this, take a second to comment what you think below. What do you usually call laziness in your own life? Where do you feel stuck, and what might actually be behind that? A study published in Cognition and Emotion in 2013 found that procrastinators often experience higher levels of stress and lower emotional self-regulation. The researchers concluded that procrastination is less about productivity and more about coping. Or, as Dr. Fushia Siroaz puts it, procrastination is essentially irrational. We delay despite knowing that delay will make us worse off. This delay isn't laziness, it's strategic emotional numbing. You delay the task not because you don't want to succeed, but because success means confronting the terrifying possibility of not being good enough to begin with. There's also the concept of ego preservation. If you never truly try, you never truly fail. The fantasy of your potential stays intact. Philosopher Alain de Botton explained it like this: anyone who isn't embarrassed of who they were last year probably isn't learning enough. But facing that embarrassment requires vulnerability, and that's something we're conditioned to avoid. Stephen Pressfield, in The War of Art, names this force resistance. Resistance will tell you anything to keep you from doing your work. It will perjure, fabricate. It will seduce you. Resistance is always lying and always full of shit. That resistance is fear dressed up in logic. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm just not in the right headspace. I'll start when things calm down. But those are just socially acceptable ways of saying, I'm afraid this might not work. Even the American Psychological Association notes that perfectionism, specifically maladaptive perfectionism, is a major driver of procrastination. The fear of not doing something perfectly often leads people to do nothing at all. So, when you say, I'm lazy, ask yourself, what feeling am I actually avoiding? Is it the fear of starting and not finishing? The fear of people seeing you try and still fail? The fear that once you try, you'll lose the fantasy of who you could have been? Because the truth is, you're probably not lazy. You're scared. You're overwhelmed. You're stuck in a cycle of emotional avoidance that your brain has confused with disinterest. And until you name that fear, it'll keep running the show from the background. But here's the shift. You don't have to feel fearless to act. You just have to stop letting fear choose your next move. As Viktor Frankl once wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And that's where the work begins. Not when you feel ready, but when you decide that fear isn't a good enough reason to keep standing still. So, no, you're not lazy. You're human. But if you want to grow, you'll need to stop negotiating with fear and start acting in spite of it. That's where real change begins.